Nico, we are live. We are back
Yeah, we're
today.
back. We're back, right? Right, and fingers crossed with a stable internet, right?
Yes, yes,
Because
yes.
it's me and exclusively me having one from time to time having issues with the internet. But now I'm back home, as you can see, right? All
Yes,
good.
yes, yes.
Fingers crossed, internet will be stable. How was your week so far, Pierre?
Back in business, Nico. I love it. Not on a train or on a plane or on a bus or car this today. I like it. We are in a nice, stable, and safe environment. I like it.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
my week has been good, Nico. Thank you. Obviously, it's been a weird week in general with geopolitics happening at the moment and the unpredictable nature of this conflict in Ukraine and so on. But putting that aside, the week has been alright, of course. But a lot of thoughts goes out to all our friends and industry colleagues over in Ukraine, of course. I want to wish everyone good morning as well. Really nice to have people joining us. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Bogdan. Good morning, Lars. And good morning, Nico. It's nice to have you guys here. We are absolutely live. This is happening in this very moment today, like always. Like always, when we do these weekly workups, whenever we say something that is totally wrong, we are absolutely expecting to be grilled here in the chat today and to be corrected whenever we chime in with our strange opinions on whatever it may be here, Nico. But before we start here, how has your week been in
Yeah,
general?
my week. So always, with the circumstances and the frightening things which are surrounding us, and where we can actually just see that we shouldn't take peace for granted. And what literally reminded me of when we had the talk yesterday with Hasse. He's from Afghanistan, and he just reminded me,
Afghanistan.
okay, there's a war going on in Afghanistan as well. So it's not
Yes.
just within the media, as we're just focusing as of now on Ukraine and Ukraine exclusively. We tend to forget all the other war zones, and the both of us. I'm sitting here in Munich. You're sitting in Malta. We will just go out, have a nice chat, being able to just communicate with the audience. We are free to speak, setting ourselves up on the hot seat, as you already mentioned. So the hardest thing which can actually happen to us is getting sick. Fingers crossed this won't happen, and being grilled from the audience, as we obviously just
Yes.
um, went into the insane mode. But as you already mentioned, fingers crossed, and shout out to each and everybody being affected by any kind of war. And hopefully, we will find our way back into a peaceful, dealing with each other.
I hope so as well, Nico. And good morning to Henry as well. Staying on this topic, before we jump into the conversation today, I want to mention we have a fantastic agenda here in front of us today. A lot of things to discuss. For example, the Entain quarterly report was released yesterday. We are at the end of the reporting season right now. We had the Flutter quarterly report coming out as well. We had the DraftKings investor call happening yesterday as well. Um, a lot of things are happening at the same time. There is movements now to legalize iGaming in the state of New York, and I think something else that I really want to zoom in on today is the fact that the winners and losers in the American US market is starting to emerge. And I really think this is an interesting topic to dive into today. But before we jump into some of these really interesting topics. Staying on the topic of Ukraine, I want to highlight the reason why I think the iGaming industry, our industry, is just a fantastic industry. Because there was an industry initiative started here a couple of days ago by Carolina Pelk, Shona O'Donnell, and Rasmus of SBC, where they started a fundraiser with the goal to raise £250,000 in aid of the victims in Ukraine. And just in a few days, the industry have been able to raise £150,000. These are predominantly by small donations from individuals in the industry. We've had a lot of the organizations sending this initiative internally to their employees, but also some larger donations from organizations like Betsson Group, for example, from Microgaming. Alexander from Alea Gaming made a big donation as well. And thank you, Elizabeth, in the background. She just published the link here to the GoFund to the fundraiser here. So for anyone who is listening to us today, please have a look at this fundraiser and consider if you'd like to contribute to this industry initiative in aid of our friends and colleagues and everyone else in Ukraine as well. I just want to highlight that I think it's an incredible initiative, and it makes me, it's the silver lining in this crisis, I suppose, how to see people coming together and helping each other in this situation. So have a look at the fundraiser here and consider if you'd like to contribute to this as well. Yes. And so yeah, with that said, thank you again, Carolina and Sean O'Donnell and Rasmus of SBC for starting this initiative. And it'll be interesting now to see as we go into the weekend and into next week if we can hit this goal of £250,000. It's looking very positive so far, and I think again that this just goes to show the amazing industry that we are. Now to the first point here on the agenda today, I'd like to jump in straight away, Nico, into the
one more thing.
Reports.
One more thing, Pierre. So, especially with the iGaming industry, right? So we're always stigmatized with respect to your revenues origins just from harmful gambling, etc., which we tend to, or there is no empirical fact that our revenue exclusively is based on harmful gaming. The thing is, right, there are two ways to actually deal with an issue, right? First of all, pretending there ain't no issue or taking actions. And this is what our industry and the industry leaders actually do, right? The names we see which actually donated towards this great initiative are actually the movers and shakers of our industry. So as soon as someone is in need, our industry and the industry leaders actually take actions. And this is something we should never forget. And Carolina just posted that as of now, 150K have already been raised. So every little helps. Donate, like, and share so we can send not just warm wishes, but also take actions and being able to send over money where is it is needed as of now. And these are just my three or four sentences to this one as well. Sorry for interrupting you, Pierre.
Absolutely. No, it's well worth the time spent here, of course. So jumping into the first topic of the day here, like I said, we have a lot of things to discuss this week. Again, zooming in predominantly on the US market today, we will do. Nico, this week we are at the end of the reporting season at the moment. Most of the industry have now reported the quarterly earnings. And this week we saw the likes of Mbta, the likes of Flutter, also Bet365 reporting at the same time as well. But we're going to focus today on Mbta and Flutter specifically. And, we are very lucky, Nico, because we have access to some pretty amazing resources here in these calls. And we actually have Jake Evans now, who is our managing editor at iGaming, to join us here live in the weekly news to discuss the two quarterly reports. So if we may, welcome in Jake Evans here to the chat. There we go. There's Jake. Technology is working as it should. How are you this morning, Jake?
I'm fine, thanks. Morning, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Very good. Thank you.
Good morning, Jake. Good morning. Hi.
Good morning. And so Jake, jumping straight in here to the action. We had a Flutter report being reported on Wednesday, I believe. Why don't we start on that note? Like, what were your takeaways from the Flutter quarterly report, the Q4 21 report?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the first major takeaway from Flutter is just the sheer scale of the business. Basically, I mean, I think full year revenue rose 37% to come in at more than 6 billion. And if you compare that to that's really almost double Entain's full year revenue of 3 billion.
Yeah.
And we obviously also had some the surprise of some Bet365 results yesterday as well, and their revenue came in at 2.8 billion. So Flutter is just by far and away like a different breed of gaming company altogether.
Yeah.
And I think obviously that a lot of that is to do with some of the acquisitions that it's done over the last few years. And I think the best way to think about Flutter now is probably in three different segments. So you have the kind of UK and Ireland division, which is super mature, full of really good brands like Sky Bet, Betfair, Paddy Power. But the narrative really in that division now is trying to maintain market share while focusing on a kind of a more recreational player, moving away from VIPs, moving away from high spend. It's all about regulation in the UK, as we well know, and this ongoing review that's been happening for over a year now. Still, the results of that still haven't been released, and there's going to be probably more headwinds for big companies in the UK to have to deal with. And Flutter has made it clear that it's investing a hell of a lot in responsible gambling, safer gambling initiatives, probably I would say more than its competitors, and is actually implementing quite a lot of those already before kind of being instructed by the government to do that, or the Gambling Commission, sorry, I should say. So that's kind of a bit of a drag at the moment, is that safer gambling investment. The other major drag is the second division, as I see it, which is the international division. So that's basically any Flutter runs live in markets that's not the UK or the US, really. And that's obviously pretty majorly built up by the Stars Group brands, so PokerStars, for example. And that was the division that kind of really struggled last year. As we know, I mean, poker kind of had a real renaissance during 2020, during COVID. It kind of came back from the doldrums to generate crazy numbers of growth that we hadn't seen for like 20, 30 years or so. But then that was very short-lived. So it meant that 2021's full year figures were obviously down year on year when your primary brand in that portfolio is PokerStars. Although it should be said, they obviously have a great gaming operation as well. And then the third one, obviously, is FanDuel, which continues, in my eyes, certainly to go from strength to strength, really. It's an awesome business in the US. Just trying to find the revenue that they generated from FanDuel in last year. So yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that it actually came in contribution positive in some states and actually delivered £9 million or $14 million to Flutter's bottom line for 2021, which is obviously in stark contrast to some of the losses that we're seeing US operators rack up. So yeah, sorry, there's overall revenue of 1.9 billion last year. So that's what I would say were the most significant takeaways from Flutter for me.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're gonna dive into this a little bit further on today as well. But Flutter really made some noise as well on the US side of things that they see themselves as kind of winning the US market, and they attached some pretty impressive statistics to back that up. But what was also interesting is the Entain report that came out yesterday. They are using the same phrase. They are saying that they are the winners in the US market as well. So when we zoom into Entain, then Jake, what would be your thoughts on their earnings season?
Yeah, sure. So FanDuel is the market leader in the US, and that's the overall market leader. So sports betting and iGaming combined, and it is also the market leader in just sports betting. Entain through BetMGM is the market leader in pure iGaming. So without them combined, you're just looking at online casino basically, which is legal in I think 5 states, and BetMGM is live with iGaming in 4 states. But yeah, so they will say that they're the market leader for gaming. So they've got basically a better gaming brand than DraftKings does, and then FanDuel even does. And a lot of that is driven by obviously the fact they've partnered up with MGM, which is one of the best casino operators in the US, and they have that big MGM Life Rewards loyalty program to tap into. So yeah, they're the market leader for iGaming, but FanDuel is the market leader overall for sure. Entain, yeah. So BetMGM, I think that was kind of, we knew what BetMGM was going to do because they had a bit of a investor day towards the back end of last year. So their full year revenue for the US came in at 850 million compared to 1.3 billion, I think it was for Flutter. So they're at slightly different stages in their journey, obviously. But it's worth remembering that this was kind of a new operation in the US market post-PASPA, whereas FanDuel was obviously there with brand cut through due to its DFS portfolio and business before that. But Entain, I mean, it's what was this? This was the 9th consecutive year of double-digit online growth. So, you know, they're a business that's still growing. Online, they do better than almost anybody, I would say, and they have one of the best CFOs in the business, in my opinion, in Rob Wood. Just to pluck out some interesting figures, I think, so Brazil was up 111% year on year for Entain, and they're live in that market with, I think, BetBoo, perhaps, for sports betting and some of their party brands. And it will be interesting to see, obviously, what happens now with sports betting having been passed for legalization in Brazil, because you're obviously going to get, you know, an influx of competition. That grey market is going to turn white eventually. But crucially, these operators will be allowed to market. They've never actually been allowed to market their services on a legal basis in Brazil. So, yeah, I think that's going to be obviously a massive opportunity for Entain, similar to Canada, where you've got these operators doing good business and operating kind of in a grey environment. But it's whether they'll be able to maintain that market share once the market does regulate.
Yeah, it's interesting, the dynamics that are taking place. And as you mentioned as well, Jake, I guess on a global scale, the likes of Entain and Flutter are very much targeting to be active in regulated markets, and they want the revenue to derive from regulated market. I think Flutter mentioned that something like 90% of the revenue is now from regulated markets. And
Yeah,
I believe Entain is similar as well.
Yeah, Entain is aiming for 100% by the end of 2023. That does count regulating territories, though. So, like Brazil and Canada will be included in that, even if they've not actually gone live with regulated online gambling yet. So, yeah, both operators will have slightly different definitions. But yeah, this is something that's obviously really important in the eyes of investors. We've seen what happens to DraftKings and what happens to Evolution when the curtains kind of pulled back and you take a look at their unregulated operations. It does cause a bit of alarm. So yeah, we're seeing operators want to get on top of that and sort of clean out the closet, so to speak, in terms of ESG and regulation and everything else. So
yeah. We got an interesting question here from Roger. It's asking, how important will Brazil and Canada become for the growth of operators this year? And I guess, first of all, it's important to point out here that Brazil hasn't actually legalized yet. It's still going through the legal system, the bill here, and the bill has not been passed yet, right? So there's still some legal hurdles to overcome on that front. But when it comes to Ontario and Canada, something that I would like to highlight is that we will be seeing kind of like the US versus Europe showdown in a way in Ontario when the state goes live, because the likes of DraftKings, for example, will be live in Ontario state, and at the same time, the traditional European operators have obviously been active in the Canadian market for many years, and they've gathered kind of the local knowledge and brand visibility towards the players in that market. And what is interesting with Canada is that DraftKings have communicated clearly that they don't expect the same type of market share in Ontario as they would have in any given US state, for this very reason, that the European operators kind of have foothold of the markets already, so to say. But obviously, this market will be will particularly affect those operators that are only operating in regulated markets, right? So the ones that are going after the regulated revenue, for them it's great news that Ontario is going live. But Jake, do you think it will have any, like Ontario specifically, if we take the American operators out of the equation? Do you think it will have any significant effect on the other operators who are already live in the market?
I think Canada's interesting. Well, Ontario is interesting because they've said that they're going to keep the market as it is, but they're just going to regulate the operators that are there, that are grey. So I don't know if
not like the Netherlands, for example, which in effect this cool down period and kicked out the operators, right? Yeah, that's the contrast.
Yeah, and actually there was an update on that recently, wasn't there, where the cooling off period is going to lift in April, I think. So that will give companies like Kindred a chance to apply and get their licenses, hopefully towards the second half of 2022. But yeah, so Canada's going to go in and legalize those firms that are there already. And DraftKings said yesterday they expect it to be incredibly competitive for that reason. From what I gather, a lot of the US operators are treating Canada as another US state, albeit a big one. And I'm not sure whether that's going to be a mistake in time or not. I think PointsBet is probably the business that's devoted the most money and resources to investing in Canada right now. They have a whole different PointsBet Canada operation from their US and Australian operations, and they've brought in some sort of quite heavy-hitting executives to lead that operation. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they get on. And then in Brazil, obviously, there's two different bills. Sorry, I should have clarified. The one that was interesting this week was the gaming one, because that's the first time that we've sort of got wind that gaming would be regulated in the country, whereas the sports betting one's been rumbling away in the background for a little while now and is much further along in its legislative path. Easy for me to say. So yeah, that's where we are. But yeah, both markets hugely significant. You know, a lot of operators are talking about the Americas, be it North America or LATAM, as major areas of growth, and I think that's actually clear from the Entain and the Flutter reports that, you know, growth has basically dried up everywhere else, certainly in Europe and the UK and mature markets. And it really is US and LATAM, like we see with Entain, 111% annual growth in Brazil, that are going to be, you know, interesting and significant growth stories going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to make a shitty analogy here, but I remember in the 80s in the Olympics, there was this the traditional hockey games in the Olympics were always the Soviets would always win the Olympics because they were by far the best players. And there was one year, I think it was like 84 or something along those lines, where the college kids of the United States managed to win against the mighty Soviets, kind of thing. And to me, Ontario is a similar story here, because we have the established mega European operators who have been spending years to optimize their products and optimize marketing efforts and become incredibly efficient. And in comes kind of the young, inexperienced North American operators, and for the first time they will be kind of competing against the Europeans in this market where the Europeans have been active for a long while. And it's kind of the first time we'll see this showdown in a way between the inexperienced, so to say, North Americans versus the very experienced and the optimized Europeans. And I'm really curious to see how the market share will be divided once the numbers will start to be reported here in Ontario, because the Americans and presumably the Canadians are very good at reporting numbers. Like, the Americans love statistics. You know, if you ever watched an American football game, you very quickly learn that statistics is like the big fetish for the Americans here. And on the North American side, we see in New York, for example, handle and GGR being published on a weekly basis
every week,
right? And that makes it so much fun to follow how the market share is being divided and who is winning and losing in the markets almost in real time. And that's right, Rory. So maybe this phrase should be reborn again under the DraftKings bundle. Do you believe in miracles? And
it sounds like a Mighty Duck sequel, yeah.
Nah, it was the Miracle on Ice. It was the Miracle on Ice. How they actually called it. because these
Exactly.
college kids already faced the Soviet team in the beginning of the tournament, and they have been literally shot out of the ice, and then during the half final they just managed to win. And what's very specific about the market in Ontario is some of the operators who did not yet get a license in the state of New York are specifically eyeing on entering Ontario, as you have a close border to the state of New York and Michigan as well, which of course makes the market in Ontario, English-speaking market, quite an interesting and significant market. And I know that Bet365, they are specifically eyeing towards Ontario. So that's even more interesting for the heavyweights, which we know who did not yet touch down on the market of New York, specifically eyeing for Ontario. And fingers crossed, by if I'm not mistaken, next month, 1st of April, they will officially open up the market.
Absolutely. So Jake, I mean, thank you so much for chiming in here on the Entain and the Flutter quarterly reports. I know that you have a busy day and busy schedule ahead of yourself here reporting in the front lines of what's happening in the iGaming industry. So we're not going to steal too much of your time here, Jake. But thank you so much for popping in today and to give you some clarity into these reports as well.
Yeah, no problem at all. My pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me. Cheers, guys.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jake. Absolutely brilliant that we can have this kind of live conversations here together, Nico. And just if Lars is still listening in here, Lars, do you mind reposting your comment here, Lars? Because we can see half the comment, and I saw that you had a topic suggestion which was quite interesting, but it escaped me what the full. Oh, there we go. Our backend team here is putting up the effort and making it happen. So basically, Lars is asking, as a suggestion here, the risk of future regulated iGaming, US iGaming will get the heavy 50% tax rate impact for the business-to-business providers like Evolution. Now, obviously, the 51% tax rate here is related to the New York sports betting specifically. Right, so at the moment in New York, only sports betting is legalized, whereas online casino gaming is not legalized in New York. And I think this is just a good segue, Nico, into the New York State Senator Joseph Abado, who is now trying to push through a bill that will legalize online gambling in New York. And Nico, can you give a little bit more nuance here? And the efforts here in trying to legalize online casino in the state of New York.
Yeah, so last week we just talked about upstate and downstate of New York. So the upstate of New York is already regulated with respect to retail casinos. As of now, they are about to hand out 4 licenses for the downstate of New York, which also includes the city of New York. So with the Senate Bill 8412, the Senator Joseph Adeboye, who will also join the panel during the iGaming Next US event,
right.
as a small hint. And he's now about
Thanks for promoting for us, Nico. I appreciate it.
All good. Invoice will be sent to you personally. But we will discuss this later. All good. So this bill 8412 is specifically aiming for the legalized entities running the retail casino to actually run their iGaming businesses, online casinos as well. So we are speaking about a little bit of an appetizer. First of all, these 8 entities who are about to be licensed in 2023. First of all, they are able to run their retail casino. Second, they are supposed, it's a must-do to run sportsbook operations as well. So the mighty 9 sportsbook operators will be joined by 8 casino operators as well. And then these casino operators might also being able to run their iGaming online casino entity as well. So we will just see how it actually will evolve. So it will include a one-time fee of $2 million, and the online, so the independent contractors, the online brand operators, will have to pay a fee of $10 million. So for sure, it ain't cheap. But if I'm not mistaken, the overall length of this license includes 7 years of operation. So this one-time fee has to be on a booking perspective, has to be compared to these 7 years. And the tax rate for interactive wagering will be set on a 25%, but based on the gross gaming revenue derived from the platform. So these are a little bit of the insights towards this 8412 bill, which has been raised by the Senator Joseph Adeboye.
Absolutely, and we reached out to Joseph Adeboye as well for a podcast to discuss this bill as well, and he has kindly accepted to do this actually, and I'm quite excited to do this. Is the New York State Senator here, Joseph Adeboye. He will be participating at our event, like you mentioned, here in April. Sorry, not in April, in May. I should know this. And he'll be discussing this bill as he is a supporter of the iGaming industry here. And as you point out here, really important to point out is that while the tax rate of sports betting is currently at 51%, the bill here that is currently being discussed for online casino is less than that. It's at around 25%, right? So it's much more reasonable tax rate that is being proposed here for New York. And should this bill go through, it would be an absolute game changer. Especially for the likes of Evolution and other B2B suppliers within the iGaming space, which currently only operates in 5 or 6 US states, which will now get access to one of the biggest and most lucrative states in the entire United States. So this is absolutely a bill to keep both eyes on at the moment. Quite interesting on that front, Nico. And I think this segues us into a discussion that I am just really interested about, and I'm trying to think deeply about that at the moment, which is the winners and losers in the United States at the moment. I mean, it's been an absolute battlefield in the last 2 years, and money has just been thrown into this market. And I think now we are starting to see the dust somewhat settle in who are the winners and losers, and also why, like what differentiates the various operators in the United States, And as a starting point here, guys, we spoke a little bit here that the Americans, they really like their statistic, and that really is good for us because it means that we can put these statistics into a little bit more visualized form in order to understand this statistic better. And we asked ourselves the other week here in the iGaming X editorial team in New York. They are reporting every week. Can we have a graph showing the handle week to week between the 3 major operators, FanDuel, DraftKings, and Caesars, right? Because Caesars, especially interesting, they had this. They launched in the market with this massive $3,000 deposit, and they were heavily criticized for launching this this offer. And the justification was that they justified the bonus with the fact that the early customers you sign up in the state is often twice as profitable as the players you sign up later on, essentially after the first initial bump. And so we're going to take a little bit of a look here on an interesting graph. Have a look at this, Nico. This is week by week online betting handle between Caesars, DraftKings, and FanDuel. And I want to highlight something very interesting and telling here, which is that we are very clearly seeing the winners, but particularly we are seeing the losers here. Okay, and what I mean by this is we can clearly see the effect of the $3,000 deposit bonus that Caesars offered at the start of the New York state going live for sports betting. They accumulated a large market share early on, But what happened after that bonus was completed? The handle crashed for Caesars. They were not able to retain the handle or the amount of players after this bonus was exercised. If we at the same time look at FanDuel, for example, they were much more moderate in the initial offering, but they have remained with a fairly even handle after the initial launch, which I just find very interesting. And now this alludes to the fact that Caesars were able to sign up a lot of players early on, basically buying a lot of handles, so to say. But once the players exercised this offer, they chose to go somewhere else. And something interesting emerges if you read the FanDuel quarterly report, because Peter Jackson, the CEO of Flutter, he talks about the US strategy, and he talks about how important it is to offer the best product. And in his estimation, FanDuel offers the best product in the US market. It's not it's not a surprise, of course, with the experience that they have in the market and the amount of time they've had to optimize the product. And he attributes the fact that they are much more reasonable when it comes to their expenses in New York to grow long term instead. And that is what we see here, where Caesars bought a lot of handle at the start, but then they became the market leader. But now last week, they are not the market leader anymore. They are the third biggest operator now all of a sudden. And they have lost 75% of the handle between the third week and the seventh week here last week. 75%. That is a big drop. And at the same time, you can see FanDuel here on week 6. There was a bit of a bump during the Super Bowl weekend, and someone made the point here actually that Caesars is doing the right thing. They are activating and they are creating a large amount of database, a big database, which they can then leverage during Super Bowl, for example. They can activate this database during Super Bowl weekend. But if we look at the bump, they actually did not have that big of a bump during Super Bowl. They were not able to activate the database during Super Bowl weekend. On the contrary, it was FanDuel who was able to activate the database to their best abilities. So I do think this is a really interesting graph to keep an eye on now. And I would expect the Caesars Q1 report to be extremely bloody. I mean, this venture into New York is going to be very, very costly for Caesars, and I'm interested to see what the Q1 report will look like here. What do you think, Nico, of this? What do you make of this graph?
So, first of all, the US market is very, very specific, especially if you take a look at DraftKings and the FanDuels. And this has been raised yesterday by Carolina, because these two heavyweights, they are able to... Jake already mentioned this as well. They are operating with the daily fantasy sports, right? So they have a user base. We're talking about DraftKings 8 million users and FanDuel 6 million users. So I don't know how many users actually come from New York, but if for sure you just want to compete with these two heavyweights, you have to invest heavy. Otherwise, there's no chance to actually gain some market share. And we already talked about like 3 operators, 2.5 operators are actually sharing 76% of the overall revenue of the US market. So if you want to step up your own game and compete with these two, first of all, very lucrative affiliate networks like DraftKings and the FanDuels are actually or actually originate from, you have to invest, because FanDuel and DraftKings, they just activate another vertical and are able to convert their daily fantasy sports users into sports bettors as well. So this is probably the underlying strategy why Caesars invested so heavily into the US market as well. And based on the statement which you just gave, in the end, it's all about product. And this is also one of the silver linings which I just just have been made aware of, that FanDuel actually runs the best product with respect to sports betting. That's why they are able to actually outcompete DraftKings, who has a bigger user base as well. And this is something we shouldn't forget. And first of all, thanks for highlighting the Super Bowl as well, where we can actually see these one-time depositors and one-time bettors as well. So for sure, we will also see, and we've been discussing the DraftKings reports as well, who and which company will actually being able to support their own initiatives with adding the sports betting vertical and keep track of these investments as well, and at what specific points the investors will just pull the plug and tell the operators to stop investing so heavily. If I'm not mistaken, DraftKings made a revenue of 1/3 of their spendings, and this just indicates how in investment demanding these markets actually are.
Absolutely, Nico. We're going to pull up this statistic here again because it's related to what you're talking about now. This chart I want to show you guys now is based on revenue versus EBITDA, right? So what revenue are the operators making in the United States, and what is the outcome essentially after you deduct the expenses here? And look at this graph. This is absolutely fascinating to me. It's basically the revenue derived in 2021. And you can see here that the clear market leader is Flutter. They generated nearly $2 billion USD in 2021. And they from that nearly $2 billion USD, they made a EBITDA loss of 277 million. So an EBITDA loss of somewhere around 14% EBITDA loss, something along those lines. Compare that again. I don't want to talk down too much on Caesars here today, but compare that to Caesars, which was able to accumulate 472 million USD revenue. So 472 million revenue Caesars accumulated in 2021, and they lost 476 million USD. In other words, they lost more than 100% EBITDA, negative EBITDA margin. So they lost more money than they actually was able to generate, so to say. And this alludes again to incredible marketing expenses, high affiliation costs, marketing, and so on. And they have not been able to showcase how they are going to turn this graph around. And certainly Q1 is going to be even worse when you look at the EBITDA margin particularly. This graph, by the way, is taken from the Flutter quarterly report here. So they want to highlight the fact that the Flutter is performing best, and they are the closest to profitability. And that is what all the operators are talking about. They are talking about profitability by 2023, right? And Flutter, even though they have by far the most revenue, they are also the closest to reaching that break-even point that is eluding the US operators at the moment. As you point out here, Nico, in the green column, this is DraftKings, 1.3 billion revenue and 676 million dollar EBITDA loss. Although the net loss is a lot higher than that. It's about 1.5 billion if you take away the expenses that is related to share, what do you call it, like employee options programs. So the actual EBITDA or the actual loss of the company is 1.5 billion, not 677. This is a little bit dressed up, this number. It's important to remember as well. So in effect, DraftKings lost also more than 100% of the revenue. It's a more fair statement here. And also BetMGM, so Entain essentially managed to accumulate $850 million, and they lost 430. So about 50% minus the EBITDA results from their end as well. Now, Let's talk a little bit here, Nico, as well. We can pull up another statistic here because this is also from the Entain quarterly report here, and both Entain and Flutter are claiming that they are winning the US market, and this is the argument that BetMGM is making and that Entain is making, is that they are clearly the ones that are gaining market share the quickest in the market. And we can see here at the start of the year they had about 17% market share. At the end of the year, 25%. They've been doing very, very well. At the same time, competitor one here is of course Flutter with FanDuel, and they have come down during the year to a very similar market share as BetMGM. So just important to point that out as well, that BetMGM is on the rise and Flutter is on the decline here in market share as well.
But one important fact, it's so it includes the sports betting side and the iGaming side. And FanDuel and DraftKings, if I'm not mistaken, they don't operate within the online casino territory as of now. So this just gives a little bit more of insights. Of course, Entain with the BetMGM, they can rely on iGaming revenues, which they gain from running the online casinos, which is, if I'm not mistaken, live in 6 states, 3 or 6 states already. So this just puts these numbers into perspective a little bit as well. And as you already mentioned, the little graph you just or have shown with the EBITDA and the revenues, it's based on 2021 numbers. So we did not yet see the Warzone numbers for putting up a 3,000 deposit bonus, which will for sure not result in a very, very positive Q1 report. So I'm thrilled to just see the Q1 report, which includes the Battlefield numbers. First of all, I shouldn't take this term during these times. The interesting spendings on the Q1 for Caesars. Let's put it this way.
Absolutely, and Robin Erik Reed here is chiming in with a really interesting comment as well. The fact that the numbers that we are seeing and the kind of EBITDA margins versus revenue is not unusual when it comes to Europe.com, especially particularly for new markets. And obviously, to enter a new market, as we've seen in New York, is expensive. And DraftKings have communicated, for example, that it takes a good 2 years at least before you turn profitability in the US market, and it's kind of the dust is settling a bit more in the market now. And if we wind back the tape about 6 months, it was not about profitability in the United States. It was about claiming market share. This is what the investors were looking at. But obviously, you cannot lose money forever. And on the US side of things, for those who are paying attention to the stock markets, have seen that the incredibly high valuations that we saw last summer have drastically come down. So DraftKings, for example, have lost something like 70% of the share value since the peak in September. And the investors are now asking a different question, which is when are you expecting to be EBITDA positive? Because the investors are losing their patience, essentially. And so this has been clearly shown in the quarterly reports that came out now from the US focused operators, that they are giving guidance now on when the market will be EBITDA positive, contributing to their operations. And all across the board, all the operators are now communicating that by 2023, we expect to be EBITDA positive. But that then raises a second question, which is, it's not enough to just be EBITDA positive. What EBITDA margins are you expecting? Because since the early days of the US market, not only were you expected to generate a lot of revenue from the market, but the investors were also expecting to earn a lot of net profit, of course. The revenue that the operators are generating should turn into profits. And I have been thinking that the margins in such a competitive environment with such high affiliation costs and also with such high tax rate in certain states like New York, is going to make it very difficult to generate any meaningful profit margins. But I want to put up the last graph that I will show today from the back end, which is this. This is also from the Entain quarterly report, and it's essentially a little bit of a status update in the US, which states are live. We can see that BetMGM is live in 21 states at the moment, and you can see here that they are live in for iGaming in 4 states, for example, and you can see how the verticals are broken down and so on and so forth. But the interesting here is they are the first one to give guidance on the actual profit margins long term, on the actual expected EBITDA margin. If you look at this little round box here, this little brown golden box, which states that BetMGM is expecting long term, when the market matures, at a 30 to 35% EBITDA margin. This is remarkable. I mean, especially considering that Entain's global operation is currently generating less than 30% EBITDA margin. Entain in 2021 generated 29% EBITDA margin, the global operation. And in the US market, they are expecting 30 to 35% EBITDA margin. And that is considering also that a state like New York with a 51% tax rate is obviously going to impact the EBITDA margin negatively. I think for an operator, this is kind of unheard of, this type of EBITDA margins. But obviously, you would expect that when they are reporting this number publicly, that they are somewhat based in fact, and they wouldn't pull this number out of their hat. So if we are to believe the BetMGM report, and also in the investor call yesterday with DraftKings as well estimated around 30% EBITDA margin as well. And if we are to believe this, then the US market and the US dream especially is very, very well alive and kicking. What's your thoughts, Nico, on this? I find this very interesting. It's something I've been really excited to see, this guidance.
Exactly. And Robin just posted a comment that the long-term DraftKings EBITDA margin has been reduced from 58 to 56%. And as you already mentioned, now they're on a EBITDA margin of 35%. So these are margins we've never heard of in the mature markets here in Europe. And if I just might touch down or quote Daniel Gretzer. So he's also one, he's running the Maxim bet being live in several states, and he's very, very, very into the overall US market. So it seems like the overall hyped US markets, when, the player lifetime values exceeding $6,000, which has been never heard of in Europe, then these overall estimated long-term EBITDA margins, this just indicates one thing and one fact for me. For all those shiny investor reports, they are now touching down on reality. They onboarded investors. They filled their pockets deep. If you just mentioned the overall market cap of DraftKings has been reduced 70%, and as of now they are touching down on reality. So we will just see how long time this overall market will exist for the players which are in the market as of now. And I'm thrilled to see if even the EBITDA margin of 30-35% will stand there within a time space of 3 to 4 years, or if they will reduce. And we're speaking about operators, right? So Evolution, I don't know if they would be very, very happy with the EBITDA margin of 25 or 30%. I'm pretty sure they are aiming for the bigger, but they are not within the operators game. But it's quite interesting to see how this overall hype will touch down now.
Absolutely, and we are lucky to have one of the brightest minds of the entire industry chiming in here with the thoughts today as well, and it's just really interesting to see. Robin, Eric Reed points out here in regards to DraftKings that the key to building a profitable business is customer retention, and they, as in DraftKings, have been successful so far. By the end of year one, DraftKings had retained 83% of the customers acquired in that year. And by the end of year two, they are at 88% of year one, or 73% of the original cohort. In the year three, it drops to 70% of the original cohort. And while they lose players, the revenues from the okay, now we can we pull up the full comments on the screen again, because I'm reading off the comments here that are kind of disappearing. But essentially, yeah, we can't get the full comment here on screen. But essentially, what Robin is saying is he's making the point here with statistic that DraftKings has been very, very successful in retaining the customers, and as Robin points out here with the experience that he has personally as well, he's very well aware that the retention is the key to success within the organization. And so this is the kind of the bull argument for DraftKings, that even though the investors have kind of lost patience with DraftKings, the numbers are still pointing to the fact that DraftKings strategy is working. And it's quite interesting now, after a little bit of an ice age in the last couple of months here with DraftKings being beaten down, that if you just trust the numbers, if you trust the strategy, and if you trust the fact that the US market will become as profitable as they expect, then the case for a high market cap for the likes of DraftKings and other US-based operators is definitely justified.
But
so
for,
yep.
Yeah, for DraftKings, and because I can read the overall comment of Robin, we are speaking about their home turf business, right? The daily fantasy sports. So what Robin also pointed out is, although they are losing customers, right? First of all, retention rate, they retained 83% within the first year. Second year has been 70%. And of course, you can claim it as drop, right? But the thing is, while they are losing customers, not retaining 100%, they are increasing revenues. And this is the golden nugget which each and everybody is aiming for, right? So with the year two revenues at 122% of the year one revenues, and the year three has been increased to 143% of the year revenues by year three. So you see a decline of the retention rate, but an increase in the overall revenues, which is, as said, the golden nugget to actually get more revenues from the existing customer base. So obviously, the customer base you have is more willingly to spend money on the existing platform. And as said, for DraftKings and FanDuel, if we're speaking, I'm pretty sure, and shout out to Robin, I'm pretty sure he would correct me if I was wrong. If he's speaking about year 1, 2, and 3, we are speaking about the daily fantasy sports offerings, and not yet the sports betting vertical as of now.
All right, it'll be interesting to see if that is the case here, of course. Just to start closing off here a bit, Nico, the hours has absolutely rushed away from us. I want to mention as well, have a look at the DraftKings share price at the moment. It dropped another 10% yesterday, and they are actually pretty close to being at the same share value as they were when they IPO'd just before the pandemic started in March 2020. Very similar level here. They had a very big rise and fall, you could say, where the share price had increased around 300% from the IPO, and since then, since the peak, they have lost about 71% of the market cap since that time, and it makes it very difficult for DraftKings to pursue further M&A activity. And in fact, they have also communicated the fact that they are not looking to do any further M&A activity here in 2022. So Entain, they don't need to sweat here at the moment. But the question is, with the impressive numbers that DraftKings are publishing, and the fact that the market cap and the share price have come down this much, the question now must be asked if DraftKings is a target for M&A itself. Fanatics have communicated that they are looking to acquire an established sportsbook. Perhaps Fanatics would be interested in acquiring DraftKings. I have to check here what the market cap. Fanatics is not a public company, I believe, so we won't be able to see the market cap of Fanatics. But nonetheless, not impossible that DraftKings could be up for being acquired here. Who knows? At the end of the day, any public company is for sale by definition.
Yeah, or forced, right? And we did not yet see a move by Las Vegas Sands, right? If the price is right for DraftKings, right? We did not yet see a move by Amazon. We did not yet see a move by Disney. And we did not yet see the final move of the Zone, although I don't think that the Zone would acquire DraftKings, as they are specifically probably just eyeing to have a sportsbook in-house. But they are, investors with deep pockets who are specifically eyeing and aiming for an acquisition target. And it seems like the big shark of DraftKings is getting a little bit smaller and might be just a fish which one of the just mentioned companies might be about to acquire. And what we shouldn't forget is, and touching down a little bit on the question which has been raised by Lars as well, about the upcoming possible markets, but we will touch down on this one probably next week or the week after next week. Hawaii is just around the corner with an estimated tax rate of 55%. Shout out and thanks once again to Martin Licker. And California is about to become reality as well. So if these two markets, I don't think that Hawaii is a big market, but if California and Florida will open up once again, the overall game might change as well.
Absolutely. So much to follow up on here. I like the cliffhanger here, Nico. We should always finish with a cliffhanger. If there was anything I learned from watching the Desperate Housewives series, it is that you should always have with a cliffhanger, and I like that. So a lot to discuss next week as well, then in other words, Nico. It was a great discussion as always here. The hour just absolutely flies by here on the Thursday weekly news wrap-ups here, Nico. And, it's an absolute pleasure doing these things with you. You know that already. I hope everyone has had a good week. Approaching weekend now, we'll be able to relax. And to those who need, again, I want to remind everyone, and if Elizabeth here in the background could help us a little bit, there is a charity happening at the moment, and in aid of the Ukrainians in need. There's an industry initiative that is taking place right now, where the industry is raising funds to help those in need in Ukraine. 150,000 pounds have been generated so far in just a couple of days, against a target of 250,000 pounds. So if Elizabeth here or anyone who's listening in, for that matter, could just post the link to the fundraiser in the chat to have a look. There we go. There's the GoFundMe. If you can write it up or just go on my personal LinkedIn, you will see the link there as well. This initiative is produced by a couple of industry people who put this charity together. It goes directly to those affected in need. Please have a look and consider if you would like to contribute to this charity as well. And with that, Nico, what do you say? Shall we go down and have a little bit of a whiskey coke or something on the beach?
Yeah, or a margarita, right? So this is something which I'm aiming for as well. But one more thing to add. Shout out to the community as well, right? So it makes so much fun, and as you can see, we're picking up your posts, including them within what we're discussing, and this is just great to have these insights as well from these heavyweights, and being being just able to distribute their knowledge within our short time of this 1 hour as well. And once again, thank you for raising the initiative. Once again, the donation. As you said, these 3 people who actually rose or set up this overall donation, we can rely on them, and we can put our trust into them as well. So the money will be given to those in needs in Ukraine, 100% sure and 100% secure. So I don't doubt this in any way, and every little helps.
Absolutely, Nico. All right, so I'll see you down at the beach. Margarita, 5 minutes. Let's do it.
Okay, let's
All
do
right.
that. Okay,
Have
thank
a great
you.
Friday,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you so
Likewise.
much.
Bye.